A little under the scrutiny of the media, saying things, taking pictures and stuff. How does someone live with that and not feel like you want to go and knock someone's face for what they wrote?
If you ask most people what their number one fear is, what do you think it is? Most people's number one fear is public humiliation. Okay.
All right, let's set the stage here. We're talking about two acting titans. Mel Gibson, the man behind Braveheart, Mad Max, and Lethal Weapon, a dude who knows how to tell a story. And then you've got Robert De Niro, one of the greatest actors of all time. Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Godfather Part 2. I mean, come on. But here's the twist. One of them is still making movies that people actually care about, while the other, well, let's just say he's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons. And just when you thought Hollywood drama couldn't get any juicier, Mel Gibson steps in and says what we've all been thinking. But hold up. Before we dive into that, quick question. Who's your favorite actor between these two, Mel or De Niro? Drop your pick in the comments and let's see who comes out on top. Alright, so Mel Gibson, love him or hate him, the guy's had a wild career. Scandals? Yeah, plenty. But here's the crazy part. He actually bounced back. Hacksaw Ridge won Oscars, he's directing Lethal Weapon 5, and he's out here making movies that people actually want to see. And then there's De Niro. This guy was once untouchable. Seriously. Raging Bull, Heat, the dude was a force. But lately, it's like he's more focused on lecturing people than, acting. And trust me, people notice. Instead of giving us another iconic performance, De Niro's been busy turning Hollywood into his personal soapbox. Every time he's in the news, it's not for some amazing new role, it's because he's going off on political rants. And guess who's not having it anymore? Yep, Mel Gibson just called him out. So let's talk about why this is such a big deal. Mel Gibson is not a Hollywood darling. He's been blacklisted, canceled, exiled, you name it. And yet, he's pulled off one of the most successful comebacks in recent history. Why? Because he's not out here preaching. He's just making movies. And guess what? People like that. They're tired of actors treating award shows like political rallies. Like, dude, we just want to enjoy a good movie without getting a lecture. Now, let's compare that to De Niro. Instead of letting his work speak for itself, he's been making more headlines for his outbursts than for his movies. And speaking of movies, oh man, have you seen the Alto Nights trailer? Oof. This was supposed to be his big comeback. A gangster film, De Niro playing two roles. Sounds like a slam dunk, right? Except it flopped. Warner Brothers practically buried the movie before it even came out. And here's the real kicker. Audiences just aren't showing up for De Niro's films anymore. And Mel Gibson? Oh, he sees exactly why. Now this is where it gets spicy. Mel Gibson just said what nobody in Hollywood wants to admit. He called out actors like De Niro who spend more time preaching than, performing. And honestly, he's not wrong. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a De Niro movie that actually blew you away? Yeah, I'll wait. Meanwhile, Mel's gearing up for Lethal Weapon 5, and audiences are actually excited for it. It's almost like, oh, I don't know, people prefer movies over lectures. Crazy, right? Here's the real issue. Hollywood is changing. People are done with actors telling them how to think. They just want good stories. They want escapism. And Mel, he's figured that out. De Niro, he's still stuck in the past, yelling at people like that's somehow going to bring his career back. It's almost like, oh, I don't know. People prefer movies over lectures. Crazy, right? Here's the real issue. Hollywood is changing. People are done with actors telling them how to think. They just want good stories. They want escapism. And Mel, he's figured that out. De Niro, he's still stuck in the past, yelling at people like that's somehow going to bring his career back. And the worst part? Hollywood is starting to move on from him. Studios don't want the drama. They want box office success. And right now, De Niro just isn't bringing that. So here's my question to you. Do you think De Niro can ever turn things around? Or is he stuck being that angry old guy who just won't let it go? And what about Mel Gibson? Has he actually redeemed himself? Or is he still too controversial? Let me know what you think in the comments. People want stories that captivate them, not sermons that scold them. Gibson's figured that out, and it's why his star continues to shine while others fade. This isn't to say Gibson's perfect, far from it. But in the showdown of ideologies and career trajectories, he's got the upper hand. He's managed to navigate the pitfalls of Hollywood by focusing on what he does best, making movies. De Niro, on the other hand, seems intent on alienating the very audience that once adored him. Because at the end of the day, there's always another actor, another movie, another story to tell. Nobody's indispensable, least of all someone who's actively trying to make themselves unlikable. It's not too late for him to turn things around, but let's be real. The clock is ticking. The industry moves fast, and there's no room for dead weight. If De Niro wants to stay relevant, he's going to have to pull off a miracle, or at least a decent performance. But miracles are hard to come by, and decent performances don't happen when you're too busy ranting about everything under the sun. His antics have driven audiences away. Warner Brothers, once the powerhouse behind his name, now feels like they're scrambling to wash their hands of him. Other studios that once boasted his involvement, same story. And what's his response to this chaos? He goes on about doing what's best for the country and California, as though anyone really believes Hollywood's moral compass points in that direction. Anywhere other than the box office, the cherry on top is that De Niro's been labeled as some kind of ambassador for Hollywood. Let that sink in. The guy's got a title that sounds more like an LA PR line than a real honor. Meanwhile, while he's busy wearing that badge, actors like Mel Gibson and James Woods are openly calling him out. Gibson, the man who's arguably been through his own rounds of controversy, still manages to come off as more genuine and passionate about his craft. At least Mel's got the guts to own his projects. Say what you want about a fifth Lethal Weapon, but the guy's putting his heart into it, he's involved, he cares, and frankly, he's got nothing to prove. Meanwhile, Robert De Niro's creative contributions feel about as substantial as a soggy napkin. His recent roles, comedy fluff and projects that scream, "I'm just here for the paycheck," just aren't cutting it. Let's face it, the guy's action hero days are over. The mobster roles that once defined him are now just pale imitations of their former glory. If you've seen the trailer for Alto Nights, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's awkward, forced, and frankly painful to watch someone try so hard to relive a heyday that's long gone. And here's the thing, fans aren't dumb, they see through the act. They're tired of being sold a watered-down version of what made him famous in the first place. There's only so much goodwill you can burn before people stop caring. The bigger picture here is that people start tuning out entirely, and judging by the buzz, or lack thereof, around Robert De Niro's recent projects, that's exactly what's happening. It's not just about one bad movie or a disappointing role. This has become a pattern. Robert De Niro's trajectory has been a slow descent into mediocrity. He seems to be clinging to the notion that name recognition is enough to carry him. Newsflash, it's not. Audiences want substance. They want authenticity. And, most importantly, they want to feel like their time and money are being respected. Let's not forget the bigger picture. Hollywood is a ruthless place. For every Robert De Niro out there milking the system, there are dozens of talented newcomers waiting for their shot. These are people who still care about the craft, who are hungry to make their mark, and who aren't just coasting on past glories. Maybe it's time to let them have the spotlight. So, here's the takeaway. If you're going to stay in the game, bring something real to the table. Don't just show up, cash a check, and expect fans to stick around. That's not how this works. And if you're not willing to do that, well, maybe it's time to let someone else take the spotlight. The industry isn't short on talent, and audiences aren't short on options. Mel Gibson and Robert De Niro, two Hollywood icons with careers spanning decades. But oh boy, talk about two wildly different paths and how they've handled the roller coaster of fame. These guys aren't just actors, they're walking case studies in how to navigate or torpedo a legacy. If you're looking for a tale of contrasts, let's dive into this head first. Warning, it's not all roses and Oscars. Let's kick off with Mel Gibson. Remember, Mad Max, Lethal Weapon. The guy was the ultimate 80s and 90s action star, a blue-eyed, grinning heartthrob with charisma to spare. And Braveheart. Forget it. That movie made us believe a guy in a kilt could lead armies and win Oscars. Gibson didn't just act, he directed his way into Hollywood royalty. But then, well, you know what they say about flying too close to the sun?